Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun. And I'm really excited today to have Eric Mayville, co-founder, CEO at Fairgame on the show today. And one of the reasons I'm so excited is because I know Eric from years and years ago when you owned a really cool creative agency called Wondersauce. So
Right.
yeah, thanks for coming on the show, Eric. I'm just terrific to have you.
Thanks. Obviously, very happy to be here and been a big fan of following you since the years of Wondersauce. And I knew whatever was going to be next after Wondersauce, I was going to come right back to Dryrun. So it's great to chat again.
Yeah, and we're so excited to have you back with Fairgame, of course. And but before we dive into, because I do want to hear a lot about what you're working on today, we always like to go back to like how you started as an entrepreneur. What was kind of the first thing that just hooked you and got you started down that path?
I'll be honest, it was my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur. He ran a couple different types of businesses, kind of netted out in the car sales world where he owned his own dealership. And I just always remember seeing him kind of being his own boss, getting to do his own thing. And I think that was really inspiring. And I moved to New York from Ohio and got to see the agency world firsthand on the ad side and design side. And I ended up at this great spot called Code and Theory, where it was a company run by a few folks that are about 5 or 6 years older than me. And then I really knew it. I was like, okay, I got inspired by my dad, saw these guys only a few years older doing it. And I told them I wanted to do it myself too. And I would never do it, behind their backs or anything. So left and looked to them as mentors and said, let's try this out. And I met my, good friend and business partner, John Samponia, in New York, and I said, let's go do this thing. And so that was back in 2011, and it was a lot of the right kind of dominoes falling in the right order. So that's kind of how we got there in a quick 30-second example.
And and I know like you guys did some amazing stuff with Wondersauce and really quickly, which I find so amazing. And like my background, I came from the agency world, but up in small town Canada agency world, and not the center of New York. But I'm sure we face a lot of the same challenges. It's everything from the outside always looks neat and bright and shiny,
Sure.
and it's never quite that way when you're in the muck,
does.
right?
It does look like that, and this is a great setup for this. But then you do find tools like a Dryrun where I felt like I could understand my business better because I'm not a business person. I was a designer, and I looked for well-designed solutions for figuring out how to run the business. We were associated with some really cool organizations, the Society of Digital Agencies, which is this global network, a lot of Canadian agencies, a lot of US agencies, European, everybody, where you can kind of lean in on people. And it's where you discuss it doesn't matter necessarily the tools all the time, but it does matter the knowledge that you have for approaching the problems, but you still want to execute it at the same level that you would for your clients on the operational side of things. So I think that's actually where you guys came up. And so that I come across so many people from the agency world that are in new forms of business because we all had to tackle so many different problems and solve them for other folks. It's really great to see, like yourself and other people in golf now, even that came from this world of solving other people's problems, solving it for ourselves now. So it's a wild world, that agency world.
Well, and I think I have yet to meet an agency owner that came from sort of the business side, business training, all of that. Yep. Virtually always come from the maker background, which is kind of honestly most businesses. Like if you're creating something, I guess if maybe there's some types of businesses, maybe it's a little more prevalent. You'd have MBAs going in or something, but man, it's a rarity. It generally is sort of coming from that expertise and, kind of baptism by fire when you start a business and when you guys got started and how, when did it start to hit that it's because early on it's kind of like, oh, we got some clients. Hey, they're paying us. And then pretty quickly, all of a sudden it's like, we need some systems. We need some processes. Stuff is starting to get weird.
I think that, so I come from a user experience background. The system started so early. They started 2 years before we started Wondersauce full time. I actually formed the business with another good friend, Seth Clausen, who also joined Wondersauce full time after a few months of us, operating it. But it was like the first system was, let's build up a bit of capital. So we all had side gigs, and we would, have freelance stuff. And I said, well, when we hit a certain number, it's called $30,000 in the bank, like then we can consider going full time. And when we hit the $30,000, it became real, and we found the goal then, the system was to find a $30,000 client. So then we could double what we had. So, I mean, the systems started so early, and I think that's what helped us kind of prevail, that when we went full time December 19th, 2011, like I remember the day, we had signed our first client, which was Stella Artois. We were building an app for them through AB InBev. Nice. And it was exactly $30,000. And I said that, look, we have enough money now for us to survive on bare minimum for, let's call it 6 months if we had to divvy it up.
Yeah. And
so we started putting those kind of like ideas in place with my business partners, who didn't necessarily think like I did, of every time we sell, we need to then kind of fill it in with people that can do the work, because we won't be able to always do the work. However, we will do the work. So let's think about like that balance. But anyways, the idea of these like planning and separating like kind of money and thinking about accounts receivable and thinking about all this stuff started 2 years before we even started the business. And I think that kind of thought process is not normal for maybe a designer or a developer or a maker. But I just, in my mind, I learned it, again, watching my dad, watching these guys that ran an agency. Like, it wasn't just what you did. It wasn't the thing that you made. It was all these other moving pieces. And so how do you like break that down and understand it? And I started doing that, when I was 15, like making websites for people and things like that. So it's been a long time running, a lot of luck, but a lot of good time and good timing. And I think preparedness helped us get to where we got.
Well, and that preparedness is like, that's sort of how you make your own luck in a lot of ways, right? Like it's when I think back to when I started, like I left my very first job. I was a designer at an agency for just a couple of years. And then I felt like, yeah, I'm doing this. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. It was like a magnet sucked me into entrepreneurship. I didn't know it was there, but it just like, I was sucked right into it. Right. And, but I remember at the time, like there's a couple friends of mine that had started their own businesses out of university, and they did it so differently. And it was so foreign to me. They went out and got a bank loan and bought every piece of equipment they could. And they set up a shop. And then I think they just sat there and was like, where's everybody?
Yeah.
And with me, I was so opposite. I got some like educational software that fell off the back of a truck. And, I got a laptop, and that was literally my only computer, but it looked really good when I showed up and I was pitching things to look like they thought I had this is a really nice laptop. I'm like, yeah, I do all my work in there. Don't say that, of course. But it was just like, it was so much about getting those customers and getting cash in the door and getting cash moving. Cause it was like, I got to pay the bills. Right. So
I think you're spot on. Like that was a similar thing where it was just like, you have to have the money coming in. You have to have the cash coming in. And you don't need to necessarily balance like saying no for on the agency side. Like, it's very different in the Fairgame side where we raised money. But I 100% agree with you. Like, if you don't have the idea of how that cash is going to come in and how you're going to get the cash out to the people that do the work, like, you can't run a business. And if you don't have a very, very, very tight eye on all the possibilities, then I just don't understand how you can run a business. And I'm not a guy that leverages stuff. I don't like debt. I don't like anything. So like, that's why, again, cash is king. But we used to have this phrase that was, it was content is king, but nobody likes a poorly dressed monarch. Like that. It's like, so cash is king, but like, you need that system that is beautiful and works really well. and it can't just kind of be haphazard the way you approach it. But again, you're right. You went out the right way, figuring out I need cash. I need cash to pay for this business.
Need cash in, but you like you said, you got to look like a pro.
Yeah.
Like that was my first thing is I got to look like a pro when I go in and try and land a contract. Right.
Yep.
How did you go about because I'm just remembering back how I kind of did it. And like, how did you go out and start getting sort of your first client, and then how did that transition to now I need tens of thousands a week? Like, how did you transition from getting that first one to something really regular?
So when we were early on, we never wanted to use another agency's book of work. Like, even though I did the work at Code and Theory for Vogue.com, like I didn't want to put Vogue.com in our portfolio. I respected the guys at Code and Theory too much, and just knew that ideally that, myself and my business partners could really do our own thing, which was a little bit different than theirs. So what we did was we reached out. We did kind of cold outreach to interesting individuals doing really interesting things. The first one we reached out to was Ben Clymer of Hodinkee. And I didn't think the email worked because Wondersauce was a flagged domain where it was like, it might show up as spam. And I didn't know how to figure all that stuff out yet. So I did. Anyways, he responded after about 5 weeks, love to meet. And we said, look, we'll do the website design and for free. You pay for the development. And we'll rebrand you. We'll do everything. He was a Tumblr account. And I don't know how familiar you are with Hodinkee, but that first year, after we launched his new site, it became Time Magazine top 50 in the world, or top 50 website in the universe, I guess. Ben became a really good friend. And that kind of like opened doors. Like it opened doors to Tudor, who we did work with. It opened doors to Condé Nast, who we ended up doing work with GQ.com. And so it was cold outreach. And then there was this buzz about Wondersauce. And we always joked that we didn't understand what the buzz was because, you'd Google Wondersauce or digital agency in New York. And we did pop up, first or second. Back in the day, we were pretty good at SEO, but it was more, I think, from our personal relationships at brands and agencies. John was an account guy, my business partner. So we got calls through him. And then Ben would spread good word. Ben is now my business partner at Fairgame, which is a full circle kind of thing. But we never did outbound sales for the most part after that. It was all referral, and a referral-based business is just so healthy as long as the work and the culture and the people all are kind of, working together really well. And, we called it a snowball up the hill, but we went from 2 people to 150 in 4 years with 5 offices and the clients like, GQ.com again, we did Bombas. We took them from 4 million a year to 120 million a year in revenue in 9 months. We got to bring brands like the Players Tribune to life. And all of that was we again, always joked, we got the call from Derek Jeter's agent to do the Players Tribune. And we were like, John answered the phone and the guys said, hey, I'm Derek Jeter's agent. We're thinking about building this website. And John's like, okay, yeah, you are. We never believed it, but we always would put the best work we could out, obviously, as everybody does, as the cliche goes. And, we always considered the client or customer experience of working with us. We wanted to be known as the nice agency that didn't hit you with change orders. We didn't hit you with unexpected missed deadlines. We didn't do any of that. It was, if you came to us if you hired us to mow your yard, you would want it to be perfect with maybe a little touch of something else. And we did the same thing for websites and marketing and branding and all that. That's how we thought about it. And it worked really well. And it took not a long time to kind of prove the point, I guess, that it worked.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't, especially being up in Canada, I've heard of companies growing fast, not at that epic rate. So that's a huge credit to you guys. That's amazing. I also find it really interesting, sort of we call them kind of our halo customers, the ones that would help us sort of step up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that you went from Hodinkee to Tutor, like, so sort of the direct line, and then
Yep.
like it's amazing how important I find like those are and how that can kind of guide your business in a way. Like you sort of get pulled, right?
Yeah, you get pulled, and you have to have a good eye on, I think, roles and responsibilities within the business itself, which was very nice to have.
Yeah.
A business partner like John and Seth and Brett, who we brought on a little bit later, but like you knew their areas were covered, and so
Yeah.
I could come to them, and we didn't have like stand-up meetings. Like we just had a 24/7 conversation of like, here's where the business is. I would hear about a inbound lead, which is how it went to hello at Wondersauce. Like, oh my God, Carrabba's just emailed us, or Bonefish Grill. Like they're all the same thing. Like they emailed us, they want a new website, and we're like, all right, well, we need to staff up. Like, so, all right, you got one guy responsible for that. You got one guy responsible for creative. You got like that, like natural flow, I think is a very unique recipe that doesn't happen with a lot of businesses, but it's all based on, I guess, like, the data that you have for your area of expertise. And I always felt like whatever my responsibility was, I was going to know everything about it. So that was super helpful. But yeah, that was good.
I felt like it's so funny because of course we're in a government town up in Canada. And so guess where we ended up, sort of our opportunities started to open up, and the opportunities you had were way cooler than we had, right? Like those are really cool.
We went through, we had the cool ones, and then we had actually one of our best clients, which they still work with to this day, was a spark plug company. And like, you're like, oh my God, spark plugs? And then we find out that like, you can make this cool. We're like, all right, well, let's make champion spark plugs cool. I would have loved government stuff. Government stuff seems great.
Well, the thing was, we started getting government work, and the next thing you know, it's like half the bloody agencies in Alberta we were doing work for, and a little bit of federal, and then we had some city, and it sounds like it could be boring work, but we did some amazingly fun things, which was like one of our customers that was just one of my favorites was we were doing all the training, everything training, like digital training, and transition all the training for the fire department. Well,
that sounds awesome.
It was so much fun because we got to go out and like we were doing ride-alongs with these guys, and we were doing like ride-alongs in some of the port, like the really rough areas, because that's a totally different thing that they got to deal with on the Friday night kind of thing. We got to like go in where they have these towers where they literally light them on fire. We're up in the ladder trucks, and we actually it was really funny. We got, they called one day and they said, we got a fire. You guys got to show up. And so we grabbed our cameras, and we couldn't get the cameraman because it's like, you got to be there in 5 minutes. We grabbed the cameras we have in the office and we head out. And then we get to a barricade and they wave us through. All the news media is there and everything. And they wave me through, and they're like, who's that guy? Right. And so like, I'm driving up and I'm like parking the Beamer in the ditch behind, like, where do I park? Behind the ladder truck. Right. And then we get there and we're like, one of you guys got to go up in the chopper. So like we look at each other, we flip a coin. I lost. So my co-founder is up in the chopper, but then I'm following these guys into the bush, like where there's a fire. And like, and there's the firefighters and everything. The camera.
Don't you think this is what makes, like, again, coming from the agency world, trying to solve every kind of problem, doesn't that make it exciting? Like you can look at a business, you can look at a whatever, and you can just be like, you can break it down and understand. I think that's like the most interesting part of the either agency world or consulting world. It's like, you get to see all the different problems,
Yeah. It was amazing because we got pulled down a path of being like basically the guys that could do training and education sort of thing. So we didn't do a lot of, we never did like government paperwork. It was always like, like do a film on mad cow disease and chronic wasting disease. And we were out on an elk farm filming elk and it was just, it's amazing how much fun we had with a lot of that stuff. but when you look at the department name, it doesn't sound like fun, but we
No.
had a riot, to do this stuff. But,
Those are the things that make your life stories, worth telling. Like 100% it. Like the diverse like interactions that you have or had, like I can think back to a million of them because of Wondersauce, and they're great memories. And I don't miss clients sometimes. But I do miss like the outcome, like the thing that you got to make.
Yeah.
And then you pass it on.
We got to dig into that a little bit because you already mentioned like referrals are just so terrific. Usually.
Yes.
Right. Like we used to say, I know you'll agree with this, like a great customer leads to a great customer. A bad customer always leads to a bad customer. Yeah. And how did you guys manage? I'll just sort of a little thing here. One of our very first customers, and it was actually a pretty big one, we ended up firing. And it was, because they would have put us out of business. We had made some mistakes signing a contract that we probably didn't read enough of the fine print. And it kind of was this: they can change whatever the hell they want as often as they want.
And you still have to do it. And
we still have to do it for the exact same pay. Right. And we learned a lot of lessons on that one. And of course, this is the only, like we had other clients that were really, sometimes would be a little tricky, but that was the only one we ever had to actually literally let go. Yeah. But how did you deal with that? Like, because the odd time you would just go like, this is going to be a tough one, right?
So we certainly had tough ones. I remember one that made me want to just leave the agency world. Like he called, and it was for a bakery in New York City. And he goes, look, they kept changing back to like that thing of like, we didn't do change orders for the most part. Like, I mean, if you got obscene with like stuff, we would, but this guy kept changing things and wondering why things were being delayed. And so anyways, he was like, I'm going to a CEO conference and I'm going to mention your name. And I'm going to say how bad it is to work with you. I was like, great. Our name wouldn't have been mentioned at the CEO conference anyways. There's going to be people that call us because they meet you and you're ridiculous and they're going to understand it. But the bad referrals, they were there, but the bad client was very easy to identify. We never fired a client. We maybe got fired once, like over just complete misunderstanding of expectations. But for the most part, we didn't have to deal with it. And so the bad business, I'm trying to think of like the worst business we had. We did have like areas we didn't want to work in. Yeah. Where we would take the meetings, like I took a tobacco meeting. We always had a rule: we won't work with tobacco. And you meet these guys, they're like, these guys are great. Like, they knew that I'm like, yeah, but we can't work with them. But this could be like life changing. Like it could be for the people that use the product too. But we were fortunate in the sense that our work all lived in the world of like pretty decent brands that were recognizable and direct to consumer, which was really buzzing back in the day, and we didn't have to worry about bad referrals, I guess. But if we did, we would just get the work done as fast as possible and move on.
We rarely took on a job that like if it was a bad referral, we would just find a way to elegantly extricate ourselves from it. We just wouldn't manage to
refer to somebody else. Like, oh, we're too busy.
Yeah. We're too. That's the easiest one. We're too busy. We just don't. When's your deadline? Oh yeah, we can't make that.
It's not going to happen.
And the ones that kind of still to this day kind of like almost bother me the most was we loved small business, and I still love small business. And they use Dryrun. Of course, there's a lot of small business, a lot of sort of medium-ish ones as well. Of course, actually. Frankly, we don't have that many really little ones. Generally, they're a little bit more like established because that's when they start to recognize they just got to deal with the problem, right? And we would love these businesses, but we just found fairly soon that we really couldn't serve them and make it profitable. They're just a lot of changes and everything, and we got to the point where we had kind of had our minimum charges because that was a good sort of way to navigate around. And I said, to this day, I love small business, but we rarely did work for them because we just couldn't, frankly, make a go of it, and they would have to get someone else to do it, and that was a little bit too bad because they need stuff and you want to help them, but it's like you just can't afford to.
I think that I get what you're saying. Like, as a small business to like mid-sized business owner, like that transitioned, it's those small business owners need, unless they just want to stay a small business. Like, I always in my mind was like, this is a humongous business, like in my mind, and so like treating it that way made me think about a lot of things very differently, and the difference between when it was just us freelancing for a few grand a month and just putting it into savings versus us taking clients and whatever, like, in my mind, Wondersauce from January 1st, 2012, like when we felt like we went full time, was a big business, and it was two of us. And I run a small business now, but in my mind, it's like, but the total addressable market is humongous. And so in my mind, we're a big business. And so I tell that a lot to friends. Like, I actually brought up Dryrun today to my buddy, who owns a restaurant nearby, and it's just one restaurant, but he has the idea of like, I want multiple restaurants. I want to own some homes. I want to do whatever. I'm like, you just keep that mentality and run it like it's that big business. Like, that's what you got to do. So
I love that. That's we may steal that and write a blog post.
Do it. I'm all about it. I think it's how you got it. It's how you win.
Yeah, no, it is, because it's you have to think big. And I think in my agency days, we thought sort of creative first. We always wanted to do something different and new, but that sort of hampered our growth. Like, we were growing.
Yep.
But it was not really sort of the forefront. With Dryrun, it's like, you have to think big. You have to think that we need to compete globally or we won't be around.
Yep.
And it took me a while to figure that out. Like, when we first launched, it was like, okay, let's just go get a customer. And then pretty soon it's like, oh boy, we have to compete. Like, and we have to somehow get known in this really difficult, cluttered world of stuff. And you just have to think big. And we're still small, but we're thinking big because that's just, you have to, right?
I 100% agree. Like that, like, unless you're just going to, even when actually, no, not unless, even if you're, you make some very nice bespoke honey and you sell it every week at the farmer's market, but you go to a couple farmer's markets, like your competition is not the stall next to you. Your competition is the big brand in the store that they see. Like, that big brand is not thinking the way you think. You need to think the way that they think. And I think that it goes back to like systems and things like that. Like, operationalizing your business is the first step to thinking big. So,
and recognizing who the competition is also means that you recognize, it forces you to see like where they're better and where you're better. And make sure you double down on where you're better, because otherwise you just, well, hopefully people will come find us is not an answer, right?
No. We lucked out at Wondersauce with a little bit of that, but like, we needed to put ourselves out there and do work that got recognized. But like, you can't just wait for the work. I think that's you might have been able to do that pre-2019. Different world, different economy now. Like, it's no more waiting, but you also can't like be so like forward in how you try to kind of convert customers or users. Like, there's still needs to be a pretty nice balance, but you can no longer wait. You can't wait whatsoever.
It is. Yeah. You've hit the nail on the head where it has changed dramatically in the way, like, man, it's not that long ago, but before 2019, I still don't think I was getting as many like cold emails coming in every bloody day, and a bunch of them are coming like AI written garbage, and even the ones that aren't are difficult. Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder to get people's attention. You can't, but you can't hard sell. You still just got to get your message out there, and this is how we can help you and warm them up. And that's it's a much harder space. And then every business right now is batten down the hatches. Like we saw when COVID first hit, we saw early on that a lot of them were struggling, and we saw product businesses starting to do service business starting to do product, as a sort of the sideshow to augment. We saw so many businesses really suffering, and then we saw some that were just knocking it out of the park. Like they just the right model at the right time, and they're killing it. Now it feels like everybody's just like, like this is kind of hard, you know?
I get the same sense. I will say that like I always harken back to the agency world again, because it's what I know, beyond golf now, but like the agency world was cyclical. Like that's why Wondersauce excelled. Like we entered at the right portion of the cycle, which was after, like the 2008 like collapse took a couple years to impact agencies. And so like when I started freelancing in 2009, like by the time we went to go pitch as Wondersauce, like people were like Razorfish, which is where I worked, they couldn't go to a $500,000 pitch. That $500,000 pitch would change my life. They needed so much money. But I think that the same thing is happening now. Like you're in these like cycles, but where are the businesses that are business sectors that we can really focus on? Like golf, we're in a really good place because of COVID. Like a lot of things are happening. I think the agency thing's happening again, but at a small scale. Like you need to be that 10 and under person agency that can handle the 2-week turnaround on a Webflow project for $40,000. Like imagine like if somebody called us back in the day, like to build a Webflow thing, like first off, it didn't exist, but Squarespace did. And like, I would have taken that every single day. Like, and you would, you know, but anyways, I think it's all cyclical. Right now feels like a great time to start a business, a great time in a sector that you understand really well, a great time to be a very small agency, a great time to be a service provider or, and like somebody like a Dryrun that offers the ability to understand more about your business when you don't understand enough about your business. And so, you know, I'm excited as an entrepreneur about these times. It's not great looking at like your stock portfolio. Maybe over the past 2 weeks it has been, but like this is when I think you can really pounce on opportunity. So fingers crossed I'm right.
I will say at least my crypto isn't in the toilet anymore.
It's back up. I was just looking at it today. It's back up.
Like I'm in the black.
We've done it.
It's funny because I think there are about 4 or 5 of the agency owners I've talked with just over the last few months here. I'm pretty sure 3 of the 5 used the term weird. And so I brought it up with the other 2 and I said, I'm hearing from these guys is weird. Yeah, it's weird. And each one of them has said the same thing out of 5 different agencies, that it's like, he goes like, there'll be like this long stretch of sort of nothing and then overwhelmed. And then, and he goes like, not like usual. Like one of the guys I was talking about not too recently or fairly recently, he goes, I haven't seen this in 15 years. Like there's always ups and downs, but not like this. It's just weird. And the timelines for the weirdness don't match up with each agency. So it isn't something that's seasoned like anything like that. It's just kind of weird, but they are getting those big inflows suddenly and thriving for a bit. And then they got a little drought again. And they're, you know, they all seem to be doing well, but it's just so much more volatile than I think it used to be. Yeah, no, it looks like, again, I'm on the outside now. So the volatility seems almost unmanageable. Like if you're at a certain scale, but it's just going to drive people to like, you know, Wondersauce had an office in Costa Rica. Like it'll drive it to like outsourcing certain things. And it'll still kind of happen, but like the teams in these big cities where nobody's going into this office anymore, like first off, that's going to change. But if it's not going to, then like the agency model or business model for a lot of these folks is going to have to change completely. Like just to kind of like normalize it. Like you can't have super high cost. You can't have a 75% people cost anymore. Like you got to be like 25 and hope that, you know, you can scale up. Yeah, exactly. It's and that whole world has changed because it's hard for me to imagine, like just from my agency days, not being able to walk into our boardroom with the whiteboard and, you know, drawing
Yep.
and talking and all of that. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of it has changed. And like with Dryrun, we've always been all remote, and we've got so used to it. We've got things that just work really well. We really have to be careful about who we hire and how we do that. Um, but the agency days, it feels different, right? It felt different. And
Yeah.
I think it'd be a bigger struggle to try and do that with, you know, a remote team like that.
I mean, look, agencies from one agency to another, it's culture. That's the only difference. Like, Huge
Yeah.
and Code and Theory were competitors. Like, the difference was the culture. Like, we were Manhattan, they were Brooklyn. Wondersauce, like, we were the nice agency. You know, we competed with all of them too, but like, it was smaller. You came in as a junior person that could do everything that they wanted to do. Like, you can't do that remote.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent. Like, I go in to the office in New York now. Much smaller team, but the amount of work we get done in person because it's all creative. Sure, I'm not like a wealth manager, like looking at stocks and stuff. No offense or whatever. Like, I could do that from home, but I need to be in that room, like seeing how Andrew reacts to an idea I have, or him seeing how I react, and then we draw it out and like asking questions that we don't know the answer to, and working for 45 minutes to find the answer. And like, you can't do that on a Zoom. And I think that's my hope, is that creative can't be AI'd, like it can't be Chat GPT, like like John, to reference John from Wondersauce again, like he had a really good phrase this last week. I saw him put up, like, AI might actually bring the human portion of like e-commerce back. I totally don't know what that means really, but I think that I kind of get it, and he's really right. Like, you get the emails, you see the web pages, you see the reports that are like clearly generated by that AI stuff. Like, no, put humans back in a room together, get them working together, and pump out something that is really human. And I think that's for any business. I mean, like we all want and need that. It's not about just working completely alone, like in my basement here, where I get nothing done.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we've gotten over the years, we've gotten really good at it, and it feels like we're just so used to it. We're on, like, I'm on with my team more now than when I was in my agency, and like the office was right over there, kind of thing. We're just like, our Slack and Zoom is just going all day to get it out.
I think
it works, but
yes, same here. Like, look, by the way, like Fairgame has one employee in New York, another in Maryland, and then the rest of the team is in Spain. Like, we don't see each other, but like getting together at least with one of us, like. Jamie from our team, I see her 3 times a year if I'm lucky, and I'm a-okay with that, because it would be nice to see her, but we get it done, like, because we do sit here on like a Zoom like this. But for creative exercises, like being able to go in person, so important.
I think you have to. Yeah, it makes a big difference. I totally agree with that. But I want to transition over to, like, because so you sold Wondersauce, like you grew it ridiculously fast. You sold Wondersauce off, and now you've gone to something like, not back dipping your toe in the creative agency world, golf. so obviously you're passionate about golf, I'm assuming, right? Like,
I've golfed since I was 10. My father and grandfather got me into it. I'm from Ohio, which is a big football sport state, and golf is during football season. I was always a big kid, like, you should play football. I'm like, no, I like golf. So play golf forever. Redesigned golf.com at Wondersauce. Like, I went out, found that business. Nice. That was not an inbound. Met a wonderful woman named Ashley Mayo, who then introduced me to the CEO of Golf Magazine, golf.com, Jason Adele. and Rob DiCiero, who's the COO. I was like, this is great. I considered joining that after leaving Wondersauce. I was like, maybe I'll just go work there. And I just thought that golf had a lot of room for innovation. There's no clear leader on the tech side of things. And it was not the world I was used to, in the sense of like I was used to selling a service and getting money for it. This was where, I looked to Ben Clymer, my business partner. My other business partner is Adam Scott, who is, Masters winner, the first Australian to win the Masters, first and only. And I said, look, we could do something really cool here. We funded it ourselves initially. And then I said, if we bring on some strategic individuals, maybe we could do something even better. And so we raised a little money. We started building out what we've been building. We have a bunch of new things coming out that I don't think the market is expecting. More on the enterprise side of things within golf, where there's really no competition. There's just one company that really owns it. And it's very different, much more challenging. And I think that being on the side, like we're pre-revenue, but revenue is imminent. And again, thinking about scenarios and stuff is why I came back to Dryrun. And I was so used to having such a finger on the pulse of Wondersauce. Like I was in Dryrun every day. I had 10 different scenarios of like, if we lose this client, we hire these people, like whatever. I could see the graphs and I knew what every color was. And so like we need that for Fairgame to really understand the impact of sales and things like that. But anyway, so the golf world is about 15 years behind the rest of the internet, if you ask me. Okay. And there's a couple really cool people doing interesting things on the consumer side. I think there's a lot of room for consolidation, like where we could all just be kind of fighting together, which I really liked from the agency world when I mentioned Soda. Like it was not, you're my competitor. It was like, let's lift all boats. So I see that as a great opportunity in the game of golf. And it's a sport that even if COVID comes back, God willing, it won't, you can still go outside and golf. So
which is nice. That's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
So it described to me like what I'm not much of a golfer. I have golfed before. I had to like a little bit during the agency days because you just have to golf a bit. And then once I was past that, I found out I'm not really much of a golfer. I suck at it, and I don't know. I'd rather be on my bike. So I've never golfed that much. Tell me what does Fairgame do? Like, it sounds like you're doing a lot of innovation, and I don't really know sort of
if you bike, you know Strava. If you know bike, you know Strava.
Yes.
Yeah. There is no Strava for golf. And so so golf needs a Strava. Golf needs a way for people to connect more. It's a game. Like imagine, would you go sit down at dinner with a random person for 4 hours? Not really. But if you go golf, you're going to get paired at a public course with a random person for 4 hours. So it's a way, Fairgame is a platform for scorekeeping. And, there's several analogies we could use, but like, if you don't know how to play certain games in golf, you can use Fairgame to scorekeep for you, like the way that you would at a bowling alley. But more importantly, you can find like-minded individuals that are golfing near you or around you that are open to playing with new people. It is the goal of Fairgame to become like the Golf 360 app. Like when you think about biking, like my wife is a huge road biker, like her life is in Strava, and it's like which new loop am I going to do, and like who am I going to go golf with, which crew, which tribe, which whatever. That doesn't really exist for golf, and so that's Fairgame. And on the other side of it, because of the background of Ben Clymer and Andrew, who runs everything, Andrew Haynes, is a brand that is completely agnostic to your socioeconomic background. Your like golf has a big issue with accessibility. Obviously, it costs a lot of money to find equipment, to go play, to whatever. And so, like building a place that anybody can kind of come be themselves. Like if I had Fairgame when I was in high school, I wouldn't have felt like a dork that was on the golf team and not the football team. And it's a very ambitious thing that we're building one step at a time. So we're like 2 steps in, maybe. And so we're scorekeeping social media-esque app now, with enterprise coming, and a bunch of really interesting partnerships with other folks. It's really nice to have Adam Scott as a co-founder who is very involved. Like, he lives in Switzerland. His friends are in Australia and the States. Like, he just wants to keep up with them. Like, all these social ideas of like, I just want to be able to like chirp my buddy that's golfing, and like, how can I do that? Like, well, we can build that. So it comes from him. But it's really trying to, I think, and my other hypothesis is, Strava is a great example, but like these vertical social networks moving forward as the generation behind, maybe my children's generation, which my kids are like 3 and 1, will really just want to be in a place that their interests are, not with everybody. They just want to be hyper focused. And I think a vertical social network is a great place to invest one's time, I guess, right now, whether that be in food or sport or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because you're, and I haven't thought about it that much, but I get sort of the idea that when you're doing, like you said, a vertical, it's not full of just random, because that's really what a lot of social networks are now. It's just random stuff.
Keep swiping. Yep.
Yeah. And some of it's like so angry, and some of it's funny, and a lot of it's there's nothing of interest there, right? But when you have something where it's like you've got this community that's interested in what you're doing, like that's it's kind of a safe place, and it can be much more focused. And I get that, and I think it's almost like it feels like that's where the world is now. Is this time? It's social media. The next generation has to come out where it's much more personalized. It's not just Reddit, Facebook, or just endless stuff.
Like, I assume that you grew up on the same internet that I did, like in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, you found the way to make the internet yours. Like, it was before social media. It was like, so you joined the forums that you were interested in. You had the chat groups, like whatever it was. And that's what I think is going to happen again, where just like the forums are going to go away. Like, if you look at golf technology, like No Laying Up, fully respect them, great podcast. Like, their paid product is an open source forum from 1999, the same thing that I was on as a designer in 99, and they're selling it as like $100 a year to have access to this community. And I'm like, well, why don't we build something for golfers? That part could be free. No Laying Up can live here. You can live on Fairgame, and we'll find other ways to subsidize revenue. But like, the same goes for, like, I'm so into cooking. Actually, there's a good, my gosh, this guy, he came from Work & Co. I think it's called Cream, CREME app. It's for, it is. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. Cream.com, CRME.com. Yeah. Diego came up with this thing. It is for cooks. It's for like anybody that cooks at home. It's a vertical social network, but like with super high-end content from the best chefs in the world. And like, that is something that I think like completely shows like the shift towards, I would pay for that. I would get rid of my cable subscription or my New York Times food subscription to do something like that. But anyways, that's just, I hope, for my kids and again, the generations behind us, that like we went through a pretty big phase of, you just did swipe. You were just a zombie. You swiped. But if you can find an interest that you have, and you can go deep into it, which is how I ended up in the agency world, because I was a part of a forum that built websites when I was 10, then you will get more out of your life. You'll become a subject matter expert in whatever that subject that you love is. It might turn to work, which might not make it the most fun thing ever, but you can still then have other hobbies. And so if that is the right hypothesis, then we're on the right track for Fairgame. And it's an interesting challenge to continue to kind of tackle. It's not changing behavior, but you do need to like create new behaviors, I guess, which is tough to do in the digital world. So That's where we're
Well,
at.
and what I love about that is it ties to something real, where,
Yep.
like you said, that the doom scroll is just passive news
Yep.
and junk, right? But when it's based on sort of, because I always got like I have 50 hobbies. I'm always building shit
Yeah.
and stuff,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
when I'm down a pipe on that, I'm like, I'm learning, and but it translates to I'm doing that so I can build this over here in physical space, right? And
Yep.
it's so whatever you're doing, when it translates to doing something and the community is enhancing it, it's so much better than just a passive, just filling your brain, right?
100% agreed. That was the internet that I grew up with. Nothing was
Yeah.
passive. It was you leaned in, you commented, but you weren't a troll. You were part of anyways. I think that's what led to that community and culture that we had probably from 2003 to about 2018 ish, of these
Yeah.
people that grew up with that and turned it into a lot of different things, from a Bombas to a Dryrun to a Wondersauce to whatever. Like, you turned it into things, and
Yeah.
now like the current trends I see, it's like people turning it into more like a multi-level marketing kind of situation on like TikTok, where they're just selling something on the TikTok store that they didn't make. Like, there are people though, like, that kind of float up, that they end up making their own product, not taking product deals, not doing whatever. Like, you could tell it's still there. Like,
Yeah.
this like creator and not creator in the content sense, but like creator in the business sense and maker mentality. It just seems like people are just so used to, if I just can get Instagram famous, then I'll just make money. Rather than, if I could just make something that people want, I could make more money and be happier.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And so often that starts with, I just want to make something, and then
yeah,
eventually, hey, people kind of want this,
yeah, exactly,
which is,
exactly,
is such a cool thing. Um,
exactly.
so how, like, if so, what's next for you guys? Like, what is like early? We're getting into 24 here. What's kicking off 24 for you guys?
24 is all about enterprise sales and potentially brand partnerships. So enterprise sales is number one. It's a high margin business if you build the software right. So similar to like kind of what you do. Would love to pick your brain,
Yeah.
off camera. But that's really it. It's coming from the world, again, like I mentioned, where you sold a service and made money. It's making this a self-sustained business where investment is no longer needed.
Mhm.
And we have pretty low overhead, so it should be very achievable. And then getting our roots in those right areas that it's beyond just self-fundable. It's like industry changing. It's just like
Mhm.
golf needs a revolution. Not like golf, if you, whether you pay attention to it or not, you know that the PIF, the live versus PGA situations happening. It's the Saudis versus the whatever. It doesn't, like, golf is going to have money thrown at it because there's a lot of money in golf,
Mhm.
but there is nobody owning any of it for us. Like, golf, like cycling, like, if cycling had an event every weekend on TV,
Mhm.
uh, it would be even bigger than it is. It's already big, but like, golf is on TV every weekend, but you can play those golf courses. You could
Yeah.
go if you want, like, like, you might not be able to play Augusta, but like, you can go play where the US Open is. Like, that's
Yeah.
one of the only sports that you can really do that. Cycling, though, is very similar. But so we do draw a lot of parallels there. So I
Yeah.
think that there
Yeah.
needs to be somebody that needs to own it for the actual golfer, and not the tours, and not the governing bodies. Like, we have a governing body. Is this an amateur sport that is now just changed the ball? They just said that the ball goes too far for the pros, so we're going to dial it back in 2030. Like, they're going to change the ball for somebody like me who does not play professional golf to make it not go as far. They're going to make the sport harder. No other sport
Yeah.
does that. So, anyways, we need a place that all those folks can live. They play in tournaments, they play in charity events, they play in leagues, they play in weekly skins games, and like, all of it's pencil and paper or spreadsheets. And
Mhm.
so, if that's our competition, and we look at the other apps that are out there, 99 out of 100 of them are harder to use than pencil and paper. Like shout out we have a great, I'd call him a cousin, Loop. Like they've built a really beautiful product that they've, clearly worked on very hard, and love to see that. Like it's innovation coming from Silicon Valley for golf. Like we're the New York guys, we're Silicon Alley, but like it's great to see that it's happening. And I think that, again, with some consolidation and some focus on what our business models really are in terms of generating real revenue to cover our costs, we can make some industry changing products. And there's not a lot of those industries out there anymore. Like Ben did it with watches with Hodinkee. Like a lot of folks did it in different categories within direct to consumer. But this is one it's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's actually all about not being on your phone. So how do you build technology to accentuate that? Such a hard challenge, which I think pushes people away. So 2024 that's our focus. And have some fun while we do it, and build a very well-oiled machine as a business, which is what Wondersauce was and is, because of the systems we put in place. Like translating that to this kind of startup, like that's what we want to do. It's a big challenge, but it should be fun.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome, Eric. How do people find you if they want to find out about you, get in touch with you, talk with you, and learn about Fairgame?
Sure. You can find Fairgame, fairgamegolf.com. We're in the app stores. We're on Instagram, Fairgame Golf. You can find me. I'm no longer on Twitter, sadly. I got kicked out. My verification email went back to my Wondersauce, which I don't have access to anymore. But I'm on Instagram, Eric Mayville, ericmayville.com. Anyways, but reach out. Always happy to talk, business. And I think that, like, again, coming from a non-business background, I studied visual communication in college, but like it really helped me, I think, in how I ran Wondersauce. Like always happy to chat with that. I sit on a couple of boards, advise, happy to mentor, happy to do whatever. So find me out there, and let's play some golf. If you golf, I'm around. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me here. I've been a huge fan of Dryrun since I first found it, and I hope that I've brought a few customers your way. Maybe you'll have a new restaurant in Pleasantville, New York, starting today or tomorrow. But I really think that it's to help a visual person like myself understand their business. It's the tool that you should kind of make sure you're using. So thanks again for having me.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. This was so much fun, and I could have talked for 2 hours, but I know you probably got things to do. So this is a really great time, and thanks everyone for joining us. Again, look up Eric, Fairgame Golf. Fairgamegolf.com. Look up Eric, and of course, come visit us at Dryrun.com if you're looking for a way to forecast your cash flow, your sales pipeline, model scenarios, figure out your way forward, especially for 24 coming up. Please come and talk with us. So thanks again, Eric. This was just a great time.
My pleasure.